Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is SnipesKiller here and welcome back to another tank review, guys. And today I am going to be reviewing the IS-2, part of the Berlin trio, the Russian Tier 7 premium heavy tank that is only available in the premium shop for about, I don't know, another 16 hours or so. It's pretty much done on December 9th in the morning, and that is pretty much going to be the only time you're going to be able to pick this thing up. And so we're going to be reviewing this tank today, guys, and I'm going to be showing you its strengths, its weaknesses, and effectively how to take this thing out if you're not really interested in it. Now, as per request, because of the last video I did on a review of the T28E with the F30, this time on this review I am going to be showing you how this thing performs when you have two equipment slots loaded on it, gun rammer and ventilation. As well, this tank is also going to have Brothers in Arms fully equipped with it the first time you buy it, and you'll have 100% crew ready to start training up your next crew skills. And this is really going to affect how this tank performs in battle. So ladies and gentlemen, enough about this nonsense. Let's take a look and see how this thing compares to the Tier 7 Russian IS and the Tier 7 Chinese IS-2. Before we touch on some of the details of the IS-2, what do we really get when we buy the IS-2 with our hard-earned money? Well, for starters, this tank is $40.30 Canadian. It might be varied depending on the region you live in, but for me, it's about $40.30. But considering I got this when the Berlin trio was out, I pretty much had it already. So what you get with this tank is you get 100% skilled crew with the Brothers in Arms perk, you get a garage slot to fit that tank so you don't use up any of your other ones, and you get 1,000 gold, which is a nice little bonus. Even though you may only want the tank, Wargaming kinda pushes to get those gold packages and all that kind of fun stuff. So, without further ado, let's take a little bit of a look at what the characteristics of this tank is. So here we are on Tanks GG, checking out the stats of all three of these tanks. The IS-2 Russian premium version, the regular IS with the 122, and the IS-2 from the Chinese tech tree with the 122. So starting it off here, we can see that all three of these tanks have exactly the same DPN, same penetration, and same alpha damage, and pretty much that's because they're all the same. They all have the same 122mm gun with the same rate of fire and the same reload. So if you were wondering if this thing had maybe, decreased weapon handling, some either really bad stats with this gun, well, to be honest, considering they all have the same gun, they all have the same weapon handling and performance, except the regular IS-2 and the Chinese IS-2 both have worse dispersion while moving and traversing their tracks. As well, maybe you might be thinking, well, maybe it might have bad gun depression. To be honest, it actually surprised me. This tank actually has 6 degrees of gun depression, exactly the same as the Russian Tier 7 tank, which is the regular IS, but you can also see that the IS-2 from the Chinese line also has really bad gun depression of only 5 degrees. And this is kind of strange, because usually Russian tanks usually have really bad gun depression, but I'm really surprised that the IS-2 Premium has exactly the same gun depression as the regular IS. Now, in terms of mobility, we can see here that the IS and the IS-2 both have decreased speed over the regular IS-2 from the Chinese line, but we can also see that the engine power of the Premium IS-2 sits right in between the Chinese IS-2 and the IS from the regular Soviet tech tree. Well, because of this engine power kind of sitting in the middle, we can also see that its power to weight is in the middle with a measly 1305 compared to the 15.23 you get with the regular IS and the very, very bad 12.67 you get with the IS-2 Chinese. Well, maybe it has bad terrain resistances. Well, to be honest, it is exactly the same as the IS-2 from the Chinese line, so pretty much you have like a hybrid meld of the IS-2 from the Chinese line and the regular IS with the gun performance. So you might be thinking, well, maybe because it has good gun handling, good weapon handling and all that stuff, maybe it has like terrible armor. Well, to be honest, this tank actually doesn't have that much worse armor than the regular IS and the IS-2. It has 100mm of frontal armor, which is angled, which we will check out in a minute, 90mm of side armor and 60 of rear, and the turret armor is a decent 100, 90, and 90. So pretty much the same as the regular IS and IS-2. Now another little hybrid meld is this tank actually gets more HP than the regular IS at 1280, on par pretty much with the IS-2 from the Chinese line. In terms of visibility, it has exactly the same characteristics as the IS and IS-2, and it has exactly the same weight as the IS. So pretty much this tank is going to perform like an IS. Just a little different though, because some of the characteristics are a little different, such as like the engine power is going to be a little less, so you're going to really feel it tugging, trying to get to full top speed of that 34 kilometers, and you're going to have just a little bit worse gun handling when you're moving. So to be honest, this tank performs, in my opinion, exactly like the regular IS, and if anything, it might be even just a little bit better. But you know, I said we'll take a look at the armor. Let's take a look at the armor profiles of the regular IS compared to the IS-2. So taking a look at the visual model of the IS here, we can see that the IS's armor is actually quite flat on the front and quite flat on the lower plate. So the armor thickness is really kind of pretty much the same as you really get. You get the 120 armor thickness on the frontal plate and pretty much the lower plate as well, and the turret armor is actually quite good. Especially around the sides and around the mantlet, but you also get the very prominent weak spot of that big cupola, and pretty weak side armor, I would say. If you do angle this tank, you can pull off some bounces, which I will show you a little bit later, but that's pretty much the IS. Now, what is so different about the IS-2, you may be asking? Well, let's check it out. What is the main difference, you may ask, between the IS and the IS-2? Well, checking out the visual model here of the IS-2, you can clearly see just how different the hull armor is compared to the regular IS. From the front on this tank, you get a lot more armor than you really bargained for. To be honest, the 100mm is effectively 150 to pretty much 180mm of armor on the upper plate, and you still get a very decent 120mm on the lower plate. As well, the turret characteristics are exactly the same as I said, so pretty much your turret is going to be exactly the same, performing exactly the same as the regular IS. As well, you still have that very prominent weak spot, which actually doesn't have too bad of armor. 100mm of armor is actually pretty decent for a cupola, and you can pull off a little bit of ricochets if you get lucky with this tank. Now again, like I said, the side armor is not the greatest. It might have a little bit of spaced armor here on the side, which does give it a little bit more thickness, but to be honest, pretty much everyone's going to be shooting below your tracks, and your 90mm of side armor is not going to really hold up that great. Now, kind of like the regular IS, we do also have a prominent weak spot on the front, which is the viewport, which is only regularly 100mm thick. So that's pretty much where you get the base value of 100mm of thickness on the frontal armor for this tank. And as I said, guys, you also get the Brothers in Arms perks on this tank. Just showing you guys here in the garage that you can get the Brothers in Arms perk. And there is one other thing I kind of negated to pretty much tell you guys about this tank, is that it has exactly the same ammo capacity as the regular IS, with only being able to carry 28 shells. So that is actually not the worst in the world, considering you do have 390 alpha damage, and you do actually share that terrible 175mm of pen, but it doesn't really matter too much when you're playing this tank, because you do get pretty decent APCR penetration of 217. Now I will say this, I did get a few tier 8 games in this tank, and I didn't do quite so well, but I will show you guys those anyway, of just some little clips of what went wrong, and pretty much what this tank can and can't do alone versus a lot of tanks, considering it does actually have quite a long reload. Now, just to touch a little bit on the equipment I'm using, pretty much I like to deal damage, and I like to have a nice short reload and have a decent percentage increase to my crew skills, so I definitely go with vents and rammer to give me a better reload time on this tank, in conjunction with the Brothers in Arms perk, which gives me a 10.15 reload on this tank. Now, one thing you might be wondering is, does this thing fit vertical stabilizers? If I had vertical stabilizers on this thing, which it cannot fit, it would probably do a lot better when it's traversing its hull and driving around and trying to shoot tanks. And considering you do have quite a long aim time of 3.4 seconds, it would really help to have that, but unfortunately you can't mount that on this tank. So enough of my blabbering about this tank, let's take a look at some gameplay and see how this thing performs in battle. So welcome ladies and gentlemen to our first replay here in the IS-2 here on Ruinberg, I meant to say. And we are in a nice healthy matchup, a nice tier 7 matchup here on the Ruinberg, and pretty much one of the places I really like to go on Ruinberg is to either go on this corner over here and fight out with the heavy tanks, or I like to sit here or come around this corner and go up, like hold down on this mound right here. And pretty much what this allows me to do is any tanks that wish to come around the corner up over here are pretty much going to get instantly shot as soon as I find them, and as soon as they poke their little fat heads around the corner. And with 390 alpha damage, it's going to be a nice big hit on whoever decides to come around. And usually if no one does come around, what I really like to do then is I like to go around the corner here and shoot tanks that come through the middle, which pretty much are going to be outguarded and outpositioned, considering we were going to have tanks over here and over here. But unfortunately in this matchup, we don't have any tanks going to the east, and that's actually kind of a weird feat on this map, considering the east can fall very easily and we could lose our base very easily. But I'm not really too concerned with that right yet. Right now I'm trying to kill myself at T-3485, and it goes just a little bit high and left. So that is not a good first shot there. I aim at him to see if he's going to poke around. He doesn't, so now I'm taking my chance to go after the Churchill and nail him right in the turret. But unfortunately I do take just a little bit of damage for that, which isn't really going to affect my gameplay any much more, considering the IS-2 here can actually hold up good against tanks. And oh my god, an ammo rack on the T-3485 to start off the game here. That is just absolutely amazing. But we can hear that I am taking quite a few hits, and pretty much what it is an E-25 sort of just sitting back, and I get another shot off on that T-25 too. But yeah, there's an E-25 sitting in the back just shooting me up, trying to penetrate my tank, and you can just hear him go bing, bing, bing as he's just bouncing off the side armor of this tank, considering I'm in a decently angled position. And the only thing he really has to shoot at is this area right here, which at a far distance is actually quite hard to hit. He bounces again. I try to go for the T-25 too, but it bounces off his mantlet, which is actually... that mantlet on that tank can actually be quite troll sometimes. But one thing you can notice here is I'm not using my repair kit on the C-25. As long as he is not damaging me an extreme amount, and I can keep bouncing shells like this, then I'm not going to be wasting my repair kit anytime soon. My main priority though is to take out the C-25 too, and then go after the E-25 to get him back for taking all these hit points off me and keeping me tracked here, effectively making me do nothing. And pretty much in this position I'm kind of useless to my team, as I'm not able to help them take out tanks over here. But unfortunately and luckily they are actually taking tanks out quite effectively. You can see here just the aim on this gun is so bad. The 3.4 seconds and the terrible accuracy, well actually semi-terrible I would say, it's a little frustrating, but sometimes it does pay off with amazing shots like that, giving a nice 396 damage into the T-25 too. And one thing I do neglect to do here is reload high explosive, but I do, in my defense, prep to load high explosive for the next shell if I miss. But thankfully I don't miss, and then I kind of have a derp moment. What am I doing? I'm just ramming this KV-1 like erpa derpa derpa. But really, to be honest, in my defense, I was kind of like, wow, I was just kind of chilling out there getting shots off and taking hits like nothing. But pretty much in this game, in my opinion, it's still pretty close, but it is getting close to being over. We do have someone in the cap, the T-150, and pretty much now I'm just trying to chase extra damage, because again, going through my head at this moment is I am on heavy tank mission 15, and pretty much getting 8,000 combined blocked done and pretty much taking your entire hit points of your tank at a tier 7 level would be just absolutely amazing. Now, I debate going after the E25, but it is such a sneaky and fast tank that I decide, you know what, the AT2 is probably more of a better target to go for. He did have 450 HP, and so I wanted to get it. But you know, 268's pretty decent enough, and so that puts our total of damage up to 2,391, and quite a few hits blocked. Unfortunately, I don't have a hit block counter, so I can't really tell how many hits I have blocked. But as the last few seconds of the countdown timer winds down, I try and get a few more bounces off of the E25 and try and get some more damage done, but he's behind the ridge and it's too late to get any more damage done in this game. So that is pretty much the end of this replay. So I hope you guys enjoyed the replay here of the IS-2 here on Ruinberg, just showing you kind of what you can and can't do in this tank. Pretty much you can take hits if you're angled at a decent amount, and if you keep your enemies at a decent range to try and make sure that they don't get shots off on the weaker side plates on this tank. And pretty much it does show you here also what the gun can do and the gun can't do. Because of the terrible aim time, it does take quite a while to aim shots, and you're more than likely going to take a hit or two before you even can get one shot off. So it does make for a very frustrating tank when you pretty much do have to take some time to get shots off. But enough about this replay, let's take a look at the post-game stats, see how we did, and then move on to our next replay. So checking out the post-battle results screen here, ladies and gentlemen, for the IS-2 on Ruinberg, we can see that there is just a plenty of medals on the screen here. Second class mastery badge, which isn't that bad. Bruiser, Hand of God, Demolition Expert, Duelist, Fire for Effect, Fighter, and Shell Proof, as well as a cool-headed medal for surviving 10 ricochets and non-penetrations, and Steel Wall and High Caliber. As well, we can see here we made a decent profit. Considering this is a premium tank, we made a decent profit of the 62,505. Not as much as a tier 8 heavy premium tank would make, but it's still a very good amount compared to the cost of the shells and the cost of repairing the tank, and 1,300 experience with a premium account. Checking out the team scores here, we can see that we were top on damage with 2,391. We got 5 kills and 867 base experience for the second class mastery badge. And finally, on the detailed report, we fired 13 shots, 8 hit, 7 penetrated, and we actually blocked almost 4,000 damage with our tank, just angling on that E25, the Cromwell, and also the T25 too. And because we blocked so much damage, it probably gave us a nice boost to our credit making potential, and after everything, repairing the vehicle and all the shell replenishing and stuff, we still made 44,058 credits, so not a bad game. You can actually make money in this tank quite effectively if you play it quite a lot, considering just when I was trying to get pretty much all the replays for this review, I had quite a lot of credit making on this tank. I've made at least 300 to 400,000 credits in like maybe an hour or two, and that is actually a lot of credits to make when you're playing tanks such as the IS-2 or even the standard IS, which doesn't get that 50% bonus credits. You know, enough about this little ranting stuff that I'm doing about the IS-2 and how decently good it is. Let's see how this tank does when it's at its worst. And bear in mind, I was not having the best of days during this replay, so let's check it out. So welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a while now, hasn't it? No, it hasn't. But here we are again with the rare occurrence. Actually, why are we on Ruinberg again? Well, to be honest, Ruinberg was a map I've been getting quite a while in this thing, and just to show you how this thing can do in Tier 9 matches, this is going to be an absolute killer to how you guys think I could perform in battle, because I said fair in mind, I was not having the best of days, but here we are again. This tank does not get preferential matchmaking, and again I'm going to the same spot. Well, why is this? Like I said in the last replay, I really like to go to this position, and thankfully the truck is not gone yet, so we know that no one is up here yet. And again, we're in a Tier 9 match. Not too bad on the teams. We actually have an extra Tier 9, but there we go. We got an IS-6. How are we going to fare against an IS-6? Well, we do have a KV-3 buddy here. He has a lot more hit points than us. So I'm like, you know what? he can go first. We'll see how we can do when he goes first. Well, to be honest, he gets completely blasted as he just goes around the corner here. And so I know the IS-6 is fired. I try and go for the lower plate, but 175 millimeters of penetration is not enough. Not at that kind of angle. He was angled down a little bit, and so I'm loading the APCR because this is a very dangerous tier 8 tank, and he did actually angle the tank up a bit, and we do actually get a decent hit of 368. But now his buddy in the IS-6 has turned up, and this is just going to be an absolute slaughter. Even again with APCR loaded, it was not enough to go through his lower plate. Now fair enough, I could shoot at the upper plate, but it's just so much more angled than the lower plate, and so pretty much I'm just trying to get extra damage as I try and fight for my life here against two IS-6s. And this is kind of where the IS-2 does not excel at. It does not excel at fighting higher tiered opponents completely alone. Even with the KV-3 on my side, this tank just completely fell apart as soon as these IS-6s came around. And so that is pretty much the end of my run right there, and that is how quickly you can die in this tank when you get in a very bad situation, and when you just go head to head with tier 8 tanks that have decent armor that can actually block your shells. So unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, this is the only tier 9 battle I was able to get. It wasn't the best tier 9 battle, but I feel like it suffices enough to tell you guys that you should not go head to head with higher tiered opponents that have decent armor in this tank. If you can go head to head with enemy tanks when you have a lot of backup and a lot of higher tier backup, then you'll probably have a better chance at surviving. But me in this battle, I didn't have the best chance at surviving against these IS-6s, especially with the KV-3, who did die quite early on. But I hope this kind of just shows you what really can go on in the tier 8 battle if you're in a very bad position and if you don't have a lot of backup. So just to briefly touch on the weaknesses of the IS-2 for those who are not interested in this tank, pretty much what you need to do to take this tank out effectively is aim for the lower plate, because the lower plate is only 120 millimeters thick, and even if you're the same tier or higher, you're going to have a better chance of penetrating the lower plate than the upper plate, considering it is decently well angled. But if you're in like a tier 8 tank, then you should have no problem penetrating the upper plate, and you should also try and aim for these side areas if the IS-2 is trying to angle around a corner, because they are quite weak. As well, one of the other very prominent features of this tank is the cupola, which is viewable from 360 degrees around this tank, and is only about 90 millimeters thick, so you're easily going to be able to penetrate it if you can hit it. But I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Snipeskill here doing a review of the IS-2, the tier 7 Russian premium tank. And pretty much if you guys liked it, feel free to leave a like. If you disliked it, you know what to do. Hit that dislike button, and be sure to leave a comment about what you think about the IS-2. Is it overpowered? Is it underpowered? Or do you really feel like it's not really worth it compared to the regular IS? But in my opinion, I really like this tank. So again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. So take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye, guys.